Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everywhere around the world from all over the place you're watching. My name is Thank God Ebenezer, and today we're going to be talking to us about the progress we've made in the development of the African BioGenome project. And the sequence of events will be mainly, we'll have a 5 minutes presentation, kind of providing context to the African BioGenome project. And then we'll have about 3 other presentations, one from Roxana. She'll be talking about the progress we've made in the pilot project of the African BioGenome, which we actually kicked off in June. And then we'll have Dr. Simplis Nuala, who will be basically providing perspective from the African Union side of things. And finally, we'll have Professor Edith Hard, who would also be talking to us about the new EMBU program. So we'll have this series of presentations, and at the end, we'll then have a question and answer session where we'll merge all these presentations and have the Q&A and discussion session at once. So I think we'll go to the first item on the agenda, which is the background to the African BioGenome project. Hello, everyone. My name is Thank God Ebenezer, and today I'm going to be talking to us about the African BioGenome project. It's been nearly 12 months, or exactly 12 months, since we had the first African BioGenome at the Biodiversity Genomics conference. Today, we're going to be discussing the progress we've made over the past 12 months in putting together the community of the African BioGenome project. So just a bit of a recap or a background. There are basically 3 goals within the Africa BioGenome project. And this is mainly, the first goal is actually to coordinate all non-human genome sequencing efforts in Africa, initiate, develop, and support new ones, and then deploy the sequencing data of the African BioGenome project to the regional biobanks and Africa CDC. And the main aim of the African BioGenome project is basically to sequence the genomes of indigenous and endemic biological species across Africa. And we aim that the African BioGenome project, otherwise called AfricaBP, would be an umbrella body project rather, and then we'll have the DAISY network, which we aim to support this process. So we aim to sequence all eukaryotic species in Africa, mainly looking at vertebrate species, invertebrates as well as algae, plants, protozoa, and fungi within the African BP. So there are 5 grand challenges in Africa BioGenome project. The first one is genomics and bioinformatics for the agri-environment. The second one is crops and livestock improvement and health. The third one is genomics for the conservation of endangered species. The fourth one is social economics and policy. And the fifth one is technology development, knowledge exchange, and industry. And of course, all of this will revolve around value proposition and capacity building for the African people. So AfricaBP aims to drive standards across the continent in terms of biogenomes, and also involve standard around sampling, a standard around sample preparations and nucleic acid extractions, sequencing and assembly, IT and infrastructure, and of course, value proposition and empowerment. We aim to do this by working with the community within the BioGenome project. So a few months ago, we started the pilot project, mainly, which was again motivated by the collaboration with the Vertebrate Genome project. And the idea for us is to sequence about 2,500 species in 3 years. And this species includes both plants, vertebrates, and also invertebrates. And for the vertebrate section, we're working with the Vertebrate Genome project to sequence at the initial instance about 18 species, but the idea is to look at 500 species down the line over the next few years, as well as work with the majority of the VGP community. And ultimately, we aim that this will be connected or seated within the Africa Academy of Sciences, ESA, or any other scientific agency in Africa that is tasked in delivering the mandate in terms of science. And of course, we are open for partnership. So as I mentioned previously, we since 12 months ago, we've been able to make some progress, mainly focusing on bringing everyone together, defining roles and responsibility, defining the goals. And we've been able to put together a structure of the AfricaBP, and this involves the steering committee, which is supported by the advisory board and partners and collaborators. And of course, we have the node structures across the continent that will help to deliver on the mandate of the AfricaBP. So with this, I would like to thank all the committee members who have been supportive and helpful in trying to help us achieve the goals of the AfricaBP, mainly members of the steering committee, members of the pilot committee, and members of the advisory board. And finally, I'd also like to thank the partners, the AfricaBP partners, who have also confirmed their partnership by signing the AfricaBP MOU. The University of Cape Town, Nkabo Biotech, National Institute for Communicable Diseases, MGI, NADIC, and also Mount Kenya, as well as BGI Research. We also like to thank the VGP for the collaborations in terms of looking at the first 18 species and hopefully down the line, looking at the remaining 480 species, and as well as the BioGenome project for providing the platform for us to connect to this Biodiversity Genomics project. Thank you all for listening. Hello, everyone. Welcome back again. And that was just a bit of a background, rather, to provide context to the symposium today. Our next speaker will be Dr. Roxana Majewski, who is the chair for the AfricaBP Pilot project, and she's based at the Northwest University in South Africa.
Hello, and welcome to our AfricaBP pilot project. My name is Roxana Majewska. I am based in South Africa at Northwest University, and I am currently the chair of the AfricaBP Pilot Committee. Today I will tell you what AfricaBP Pilot Project is, what is its scope, what is our plan to run it as efficiently as possible, and what progress we have made so far. With this first slide, I would also like to show you the evolution of our logo. At the time this recording is being made, the new logo here in the bottom is fresh from the oven, and I hope you like it as much as we do. As already said by the preceding speakers, the African Biogenome Project is a huge, bold, and potentially truly transformative endeavor with the overarching goal to sequence all currently known eukaryotic species native to Africa while building environmental, agricultural, and biotechnological capacity across the continent within a 10-year framework. The AfricaBP pilot phase, or AfricaBP pilot project, will last 3 years, during which we hope to sequence the genomes of about 2,500 species. The idea of AfricaBP was born some time ago, with the official start of the planning marked by the African Biogenome Workshop held in October 2020. And several months later, in June 2021, we had the AfricaBP pilot kickoff meeting, and soon after, the new pilot committee members were onboarded. Therefore, everything I will talk about today happened within the last 3 months. Now, what's the AfricaBP pilot project, and what do we expect to achieve by launching the pilot first? As with any such initiative, we need to test the water. This has never been done before, and there are some inherent risks we need to consider, assess, and find solutions for should those risks become real issues. Apart from the risks, this puzzle has a lot of pieces we need to assemble, quite literally. Therefore, the primary goal of the pilot, which is our small-scale implementation of the proposed ideas and solutions, is to prove the viability of the different concepts that the main project will be built upon. Among others, the pilot will enable risk management and identify any shortfalls before the more substantial resources can be committed. It will test the proposed procedures and benefits. It will confirm scalability. It will provide the deliverables that are necessary for the main project. And these deliverables will include carefully written and revised terms of reference, benefit assessments, viability reports and recommendations, roadmap for implementation, and a more detailed and revised project budget. To run the pilot project, we have the pilot project committee that is composed of 8 subcommittees and assisted by the pilot support team. Because of the nature of this project, In this initial stage of the pilot committee activity, some of the subcommittees are busier than others. And this talk will also be skewed towards what has already been done around those areas of work. The next time we meet, however, it's likely this focus will shift to the other 4 subcommittees. The pilot has the chair and 2 co-chairs or vice chairs, and these are myself, Zara, and Sadik. At the moment, the pilot committee has nearly 150 members who either come from or are based in 40 countries. It is worth saying that at least 60% of the current committee members are young people, early career scientists and graduate students for whom active participation in AfricaBP pilot may be an enormous opportunity to develop unique skills and worldwide network of external mentors or collaborators. One of the subcommittees that's now in the spotlight is the Sample Collection and Processing Subcommittee, which is responsible for species and specimen sourcing. This is not a small feat, and to make sure we have the critical mass of experts and stakeholders involved in the planned actions, this subcommittee includes taxonomic working groups, which unite taxonomists of similar interests. Having these specialists on board is essential to ensure that diverse taxonomic expertise is at hand when needed, as the scientific value of genomes of unidentified or misidentified organisms will be limited. Similarly, we will collaborate with the so-called sample ambassadors or sample custodians who will localize the targeted species and will assist in sample acquisition. The national representatives, in turn, will be the source of knowledge about the legal context and regulations related to the sample collection and possible shipment to another country, as, especially at the beginning of this project, in many cases the collected biological material will need to be shipped to another African country for sequencing, and this is due to the fact that at the moment, not all African countries possess suitable wet labs and sequencing facilities. Our Sample Collection and Processing Subcommittee worked closely with ELSI, which is Ethics, Legal and Social Issues Subcommittee. It's easy to imagine that the efficient acquisition of all necessary and country-specific permits will be key to overcome one of the major bottlenecks this project may face. However, it's also essential to ensure that whatever this project does is done responsibly and ethically, and that whatever we achieve will benefit not only the direct project participants, but especially the local communities and all African countries. Therefore, we strive to be as inclusive as possible. Again, at the time of this presentation being recorded, we are about to launch the AfricaBP website. The website is the fruit of collaboration between the AfricaBP members and Inquaba Biotech, an African genomics company with offices and labs in several African countries, who generously offered to sponsor the website production and its long-term maintenance. The AfricaBP is now also on social media and other online networking platforms, so please follow us and stay tuned for updates. AfricaBP is a highly collaborative effort, and we are open to new partnerships, both within and between Africa and other continents. This is being taken care of by our Partnership and Fundraising Subcommittee, whose task is to provide a suitable and mutually beneficial framework of engagement for AfricaBP and its partners. The AfricaBP partners include partnering projects as well as institutional and corporate partners. At the moment, we have 1 associate project and 5 institutional and 2 corporate partners. However, this is a quickly changing landscape as conversations are being conducted with dozens of other potential partners as we speak. AfricaBP is a large regional project, but the most fundamental questions about the evolution and biology of eukaryotic life and life in general cannot be answered by regional initiatives. And we recognize the need and express our willingness to collaborate with other genomics projects worldwide. In the spirit of this, we are currently discussing the details of collaboration with the Vertebrate Genome Project, whose goal is to unveil the chromosomal gene evolution in vertebrates. We have already identified the potential sample custodians of the first 18 vertebrate species nominated by VGP, and we are now in the process of obtaining the necessary permissions to sample and transfer the obtained samples to one of the African sequencing centers. Within the next 2 or 3 years, a total of about 500 vertebrate species is planned to be sequenced in Africa or in close collaboration with African scientists. We are also in the midst of discussions with the 10KP project that aims to sequence over 10,000 genomes of plants and eukaryotic microbes. Naturally, some of those organisms also live in Africa. So how are we going to choose which species should be sequenced first? To make sure the pilot project achieves its goals and provides the desired deliverables, which are not so much the genomes, but the viability assessment, risk management, revised action plan, pipelines, and structures, to make sure this is achieved, we need a sufficiently diverse pool of samples that should include organisms provided by different countries across different taxonomic groups and habitats. So yes, we are also interested in marine species. More importantly, however, we would like community input into which African species should be targeted by the pilot. That's why we have created the call for 2,500 priority species. The call is still open and we would love to hear from you. The ideal candidate for this list would be a species that's either ecologically, economically, culturally, or scientifically important. It can be an iconic species, threatened or endangered species, or species that is poorly known. We don't want to make these decisions. We would like the African scientists and community members to tell us what species are particularly important to them and why. So please go to the AfricaBP website or social media and look for this call. The implementation testing during the pilot phase will of course involve the creation of a roadmap for genome sequencing, annotation, but also its interpretation. We would like all that to happen in Africa, and one of the objectives is to have at least 80% of the African genomes sequenced in Africa. Ideally, by the end of the main project, there will be at least one genome sequenced from each of the African countries. But the objective of the pilot is to have at least one species sequenced from all 5 African regions. And here I would also like to use this opportunity to draw your attention to the poster presentation that was prepared by our AfricaBP pilot Genome Annotation Subcommittee. This initiative is supported by very many individuals, institutes, and companies, and we are extremely grateful for all the enthusiasm and help which we keep receiving in many different forms. All AfricaBP members are volunteers who donate their time, energy, knowledge, and skills every day and night, and without whose contributions the terrific progress we have already made would not be possible. Therefore, big thank you to all. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for having me today at this historic event.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back again. That was a nice presentation from Roxana. So we'll move to the next presentation by Dr. Simplice Nwala, who has the Agriculture Division at the African Union in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Thank you, Ebenezer, and thank you, the moderator. I stand on the existing protocol. I want to bring to you the greetings from the Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy, and Sustainable Environment of the African Union Commission, and thank the organizer for giving me the opportunity to speak at this very important symposium of the African BioGenome Project 2021. Our presence here today is another demonstration of our commitment to support science on the continent, but more importantly, our support to this very important project. Dear participants, the symposium is held in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic that have demonstrated the fragility of African food systems. The impact of the pandemic on our food system has been compounded by the many other crises that agricultural sector on the continent faces, such as the desert locusts and the fall armyworm infestation and the climate change. The second context is that of the UN Food System Summit that was held last week, and during which the continent, individually or collectively, expressed its commitment to strengthen the resilience of its food systems. It is worth noting that the various heads of state and government who spoke during the summit put the acceleration of the CAADP implementation at the center of the game-changing solutions for sustainably transforming African food system. Distinguished participants, you will agree with me that every report on the state of African food security and malnutrition that has ever been produced paints a bleak picture. I will not mention the figures that you probably know better than I do. Neither I will speak of the potential that the continent has to transform its food systems. But until this potential is fully exploited, it will remain a potential, and we will have no excuse as professionals to millions of Africans who go to bed empty stomach every day. Distinguished participants, it goes without saying that the power of modern agricultural technology and genomics in transforming African food system into a force of economic growth, creating wealth in the rural space and beyond, feeding a growing African population and conserving resources for the future generation cannot be ignored or overstated. Scientists that you are designing and developing livestock breeds and crop variety with higher yields, additional nutrients, increased disease resistance, and enhanced taste through crop biotechnology and genomics. Speaking to the theme of this symposium, I would like to invite the participants to this meeting to reflect on the role of genomics to enhancing the contribution of African diet to healthy and sustainable diets. As you all know, Africans or indigenous foods have been part of the African ecosystem and have provided dietary diversity and are subsequently powerful source of nutrient and better health. There are recent evidence of the nutritional benefits of some of the African green leaves vegetables commonly consumed in rural areas across the continent. The diversity of African food and diet is not limited to plant and crop only, but also extends to animals and insects that have been in existence and consumed for generations. Indigenous or traditional breeds of chicken, rabbit, goats, cattle, and other domesticated animals have been in African dishes for centuries. They are evidence of the importance of indigenous African animal and poultry breeds and some edible insects in providing dietary diversity and nutrient availability with low carbon print, thus contributing immensely to lessen the African continent nutrient deficiency burden. This calls for plants and animal and insects that have not in the priority of research agenda on the continent, and as a consequence, some of them are either being extinct or at the risk of extinction. In my view, the available genomic tools could be adapted to improve the production at large scales of these crops and animals with desirable features that enhance, on the one hand, the nutrition security, and on the other hand, adaptation or mitigations of the effects of climate change. For this to happen, biotechnology and genomics should be widely embraced across the continent and adequately addressed in food production policies. Increased support for the adoption of biotechnology, particularly among smallholders, required accelerated action in conducive enabling environment. To this end, the African Union Commission has drafted some guidelines for the use of biotechnology in food and agriculture in Africa. These guidelines will be submitted to our policy organs, first the Minister in charge of Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy, and Sustainable Environment in December this year for consideration and hopefully for endorsement and subsequent submission to the head of state in February 2022. We do hope that with the endorsement of these guidelines, the continent will not only embrace fully biotechnology and genomics, but also member states will increase their investment in biotechnology and genomics. I wish all of us very successful deliberation, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Simplice. That was a nice remark. So our next speaker is Professor Edith Hard. Professor Edith is the Director General of the European Molecular Biology Laboratory. She'll be talking to us about the EMBO new program, and as well as how this can connect to countries in the global south. What to you, Edith, please.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. And I would just like to say thank you for inviting me to this fantastic meeting. I hope my screen is shared appropriately. Thank God.
Yes, absolutely. We can
okay,
see,
perfect.
yeah.
So I would like to tell you a little bit about EMBL, the European Molecular Biology Laboratory, and what we do today and what we plan to do in the future, which I hope will be useful and interesting to all of you. I would like to tell you a little. So the European Molecular Biology Laboratory was set up in 1974 and supported by 27 member states and includes now 96 different nationalities. And we're a powerhouse of biological expertise. We are Europe's only intergovernmental organization for life science research. And we have 5 missions that we have to deliver on. One is to provide excellent basic research. The second is to provide access to infrastructures and services, many of which you probably all know, including the European Bioinformatics Institute, which provides access to data, resources, and tools to the whole world. Our third mission that we have is to provide training being our courses, our conferences, as well as having students, engineers, postdocs, anyone who is interested in science can actually join EMBL to carry out scientific work and to be trained in many, many different areas. We also have a mission to do innovation and translation. And last but not least, we're here to integrate life science research within Europe, but I would say across the world. EMBL is here to try and help bring scientists together, share science for the better of this world. And we do our work from 6 sites across Europe with almost 2,000 people. And these are the 6 sites. I won't go through them in detail, but I'm sure you all have heard of EMBL EBI, which is one of the biggest centers for bioinformatics in the world. And we also have a very big site in EMBL Heidelberg, which is where I'm sitting, and it's the headquarters. And here we cover many different aspects of the life sciences and also do a lot of the courses and conferences and training. But EMBL is a multidisciplinary organization, and we're young and dynamic. We have a very high turnover of scientists because no one can stay for longer than 9 years, which means that we're open to all and constantly evolving. And we have many different tools that can be used to host scientists, in particular from African countries as well. So I just wanted to give a couple of slides on how EMBL helps to enable genomic research in the context of this meeting, and more particularly genomic research in Africa in the next slide. So here I'm just highlighting what EMBL does. For example, in terms of genome annotation, the amazing advances in sequencing technologies mean that we can sequence and assemble genomes faster and cheaper than ever before, as you all know. And this has led to a huge increase in sequencing that's being planned, as we just heard, in terms of large biodiversity initiatives. And EMBL is here to play a role in helping to bring together these communities and contribute much of the storage of the data, but also the tools to analyze and share data. And EMBL EBI is a partner on many large-scale sequencing projects that provide genome annotation and rapid release of newly sequenced genomes. And this includes the transcontinental data management aspect, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. So SINECA, the common infrastructure for national cohorts in Europe, Canada, and Africa. And this is just one example of EMBL's key role in establishing better data management practices and infrastructures in this EU-funded SINECA project. And it's actually led by an EBI alumnus, Nikki Mulder, who will be participating in the next session. EMBL also provides data resources that allows researchers across the world to access and use genome data that can accelerate health and agricultural and biodiversity research. And here I'm just showing you one example of the cassava whitefly project, where EMBL played a very important role. And in terms of more specifically Africa, EMBL has been very active and part of the H3A BioNet network, and this is Pan-African Bioinformatics networks that actually allows capacity to be built up for genomics research and to train the next generation of computational biologists. Again, Nikki Mulder is one of the founding members of this. And our trainings have ranged from next generation sequencing to data management, including the introduction of data resources from EBI like the EGA and ENA. And we've been running training specifically on EMBL data resources, for example, Ensemble in African countries, and workshops including in Rwanda, in South Africa, in Gambia, Egypt, Tunisia, Nigeria. We even published a paper with H3A BioNet on 10 simple rules for organizing a bioinformatics training course in low and middle income countries. And this was, again, Nikki Mulder was one of the key players here. And we do a lot of training, train the trainer activities as well, to really try and provide guidance locally. And this is something that we will be building up in the future. And we know that this is something that African countries should and will benefit from. We hope that EMBL can really contribute in these areas. So I just want to say a few words then about the future and the new program that we have. EMBL is known for going from molecules right down to the atomic scale through to organisms and back. That's what's shown in this nice diagram. And so this is where traditionally EMBL has always been seen to have its strength. And in fact, we would like to go out of this comfort zone and stretch out into where life really happens. So that is life in the real world in the context of ecosystems. So EMBL's new program is about understanding life at the molecular level in the context of ecosystems. And we believe that this is the next frontier. And just as the cell is the unit of life at the organism level, we think that, or we know that ecosystems are the units of life at the planetary level. But to understand ecosystems and to understand life, one has to have a handle on molecules. And this is where we think EMBL can help, because molecules and molecular biology are our business. So indeed, these are the different aspects of the new program that we would like to build up, trying to get mechanistic insights into organisms in different contexts, in the context of different environmental challenges. Some of these are natural environmental changes, others are environmental insults. And of course, this means connecting genotype to environment. So we need genomics, we need advanced genomics, and we need to understand also the environmental parameters that change and measure them in order to get a better understanding of life in context. So our ultimate aim is to try and better understand what healthy ecosystems are about And obviously this will contribute to the well-being of humanity. So in fact, this is the program in 3 pillars. We have a bold scientific vision, which is to try and understand life in context, using the scientific expertise that EMBL already has, and in collaboration with people around the world. We want to join forces with scientists and also with scientists in different disciplines. And this is actually one of the key aspects of EMBL. We're extremely collaborative. Those of you who know us know this, and we'd like to collaborate across countries, across disciplines, across sectors. This is really about science without frontiers. And EMBL has a unique model of not just scientific excellence, but open science and collaboration and interdisciplinarity. And with this program, we would like to rise up to some of today's challenges and some of the challenges that we already heard about in terms of the loss of biodiversity, trying to understand what the impact is of factors such as pollution or climate change, man-made factors. This is what we need to understand, but also to come up with solutions. And to do this, we're going to build on our existing forces in science. So we have many different areas that EMBL is known for, not just genomics, but also structural biology, cell biology, developmental biology. And we want to build up these new transversal themes, as we call them. And these include planetary biology, human ecosystems, infection biology, microbial ecosystems, theoretical approaches. And at the heart of all this will be data and data sciences. And so the knowledge that we hope we can provide with these new areas, trying to get into an understanding of ecosystems at the molecular level, we hope will help tackle some of Africa's biggest challenges, including, as I said, biodiversity collapse, the emergence of infectious diseases, such as the one that we're facing today, and climate change. And this is just to give you a snapshot of some of the different areas. For example, in one of these themes, planetary biology is to try and understand across the world and across, in particular, land-water interfaces. We want to get a better understanding of ecosystems by exploring both at the genomic level, but at many other levels, the metabolomics level, imaging levels. And then we want to try and come back to the lab and understand communities in context. And we want to, of course, rise up to the challenge of genomics for conservation. And as I said earlier, data science is at the heart of our program, and we're building up many new approaches that obviously include deploying artificial intelligence. So this is just a snapshot of the value of EMBL's new program. We hope we can enhance scientific progress for human and planetary health. We hope that this will be an international means of coordination and collaboration across the world. And we're going to develop mobile laboratories with our most cutting edge equipment so that we can actually bring some of the equipment and expertise that we have to scientists who need us. And we can help to train people and build up the expertise that's needed to try and understand life in the context of different ecosystems. And this, of course, goes hand in hand with training and influencing policies with scientific evidence. So we will engage with the scientific community. I hope that this has given you a glimpse of how we would like to do this. We think that we need, as EMBL, we have a duty to collaborate and to help deliver new technologies and to try and bring environmental and health benefits to geographic areas that are rich in biodiversity, such as African countries, and to try and make sure that the talent and expertise that EMBL has is shared with, for example, African countries who would like to engage with us. And we are here to help in every way that we can. And I'd be very happy to take questions at the end. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Edith. That was a nice presentation. So I think we have about 10-15 minutes. So we're going to have to merge all of the questions. I have a couple of questions from the chat box from Slido. The first question, I think this is for you, Roxana. It says, how are you going to qualify species for being ecologically important or not? What is the criteria, particularly? And I think this the person who is, that is Nicola, basically looking at, you know, the 2,500 species and how this will be classified.
Yes, so we would like the scientists or people who are proposing the species to tell us why. And eventually all species native to Africa will make the list. So this is only to select which species will be chosen first. And we can already see that a very important criterion will be the feasibility criterion, which is simply whether we will be we will be able to obtain the species and sequence the species within the 3 years. So we have the call for 2,500 species, and right now we have less than 10% of the target number. So we can already see that we may not need to decide which species will be more important, but should that be necessary, we will definitely develop the criteria for which species will be sequenced first. However, as I say, it's very probable that we will start with the most feasible species to sequence.
Thank you, Roxana. So I think Dr. Simplis, I actually do have a question for you. Basically, so you did mention about the blue economy of the African Union. So I'm wondering how, because this kind of connects to the AfricaBP agenda in trying to bring the genomics perspectives. So how do you see AfricaBP, connecting to this and kind of supporting this at the continental level? Because I think this is very important for the African people as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ebenezer. Well, the African Union has recently developed a blue economy strategy. And this blue economy strategy is currently being rolled out in terms of developing the action plans and mobilizing the necessary resources. And one of the pillar of the blue economy strategy is the conservation of our marine resources. And I think linking the ABPP project to the blue economy support in at least genotyping some of the marine resources that the continent has. Because the real challenge that we are having today is to know what we have. We know we have, but we don't know what we have. So it will be important, and this is one of the key pillars in the blue economy strategy, to map and to conserve our marine resources. There is within that another perspective, which is the establishment of the giant, it is called a giant protected area, and I think there is a work that we can do together. Over.
Yeah, perfect. I think that sounds good. I think it's something we would basically have to explore together with AfricaBP and see how we can support, because so far there has been a lot of partnerships, coming together. So I think the expertise would also be very helpful. So the next question Professor had, I think this is for you. Basically, you did mention about the mobile laboratories, and I think that is very of interest to the African BioGenome project, particularly the major challenge within the AfricaBP project that I see, and also many of my colleagues also share this with me, is technology, access to technology, sequencing platform. It's very challenging for the continent of Africa to have high maintenance system, very large laboratories, high maintenance cost, is very difficult. And one of the solutions, again, that we've discussed over and over again is having mobile systems platform. So maybe, is there a chance you could just maybe kind of provide some details about this? Yes. Because I think the presentation, because of the time. Yes. So if you can explain, that would be very helpful as well.
With pleasure, yes. So thank you, thank God. So when I mentioned these mobile laboratories, we don't yet have them, but we have actually done a pilot, just as we were hearing earlier for the AfricaBP project. We've done pilots where we have a little van and within which, remarkably, we were able to put an awful lot. So we actually took both genomics technologies, imaging technologies, microscopes, and even the equipment to freeze down samples so you can do cryo-electron microscopy. And we just wanted to see, would there be an interest? And this, we went to a couple of European countries, and there was such enthusiasm that we realized that this had to be part of the new program. So what we're planning is that we will have containers and/or trucks within which we can pack the kind of equipment that is needed for particular types of projects. And in some cases, you can't just go and take photos of your favorite set of animals, and then, collect a few feces and do some sequencing, you need to get a better understanding of the microbes that are there. You need to get a better understanding of, the phenotype. So we really want to try and help scientists get the information they need in situ, and prepare it and then measure it, analyze it in the best way. So what we hope is that what we're going to set up could be used, and we could help design what would be needed across Africa. And of course, then, if this is something that would be of interest and would work, we would also be super happy to host African scientists who would help us to design this kind of equipment or these kinds of approaches, and to train people to say, well, okay, how can we bring, this kit that will measure, both at the imaging level, but both at the chemical level, for example, levels of polluants. So this is what we're doing, and I'd be very happy if people are interested to give you more details on some of these pilot projects we've already done, which, as I said, were meant with great enthusiasm. So we're very excited, and we would love to be able to share with all of you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is, because it will also basically help in terms of looking at how this are adapted to the African terrain. But one more thing is that
maybe just one thing to say, I understand the need to make sure that the data is generated in African countries for African countries, and that's very much how EMBL works as well. We don't want to do the experiments that everyone wants to do. We want to enable. So that's our purpose, to enable both with equipment, with data processing, and then sharing. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think another follow-up question to that is with regards to, again, that is also linked to the technology aspect. And yes, then that is more of the internet in terms of looking at. So I know that EMBL, when we look at the portability of the system, so are you making some internet consideration on trying to ensure that these systems have low internet requirement footprint, basically? So I know it could be technologically difficult, but for instance, we've seen systems whereby, okay, you don't have to load all the pages and things like that. So are all this factored in the portability of the mobile laboratory as well?
So right now, we have a whole working group, which actually has become the basis for the data sciences that I mentioned. So we have a whole data science strategy. And in fact, the EBI were very much involved in that. And so that will link up with the planetary biology projects and with the mobile labs. I can't give you more details because I wouldn't know them. All I can say is that EMBL is very keen to try and make data, I would say, generation and then sharing as efficient as possible, even in areas of the world where indeed internet is a challenge. So I would be very happy to put people in touch, and thank God I can put you in touch with the people who were actually in charge of the data sciences group. So all input is welcome. Yeah. And we're going to kick off, I forgot to say this, in 2022, and it's a 5-year plan. So we are still very much open to suggestions and to partnering up and collaborations.
Perfect. Thank you, Professor Edith. So the next question is to Roxana. Roxana, the question is, I'm wondering if you are planning to try to create a catalog of existing species in Africa. Do you plan to contact some indigenous communities to learn more about the actual biodiversity of Africa and do some field expeditions? So over to you, Roxana.
Yes, so certainly we want to contact the indigenous communities. Communication is already complicated because there's a lot of languages included, and we are trying different ways to reach different communities. I think this will be something to solve for the pilot, but that would be central to this project, yes. And of course, we would love to have a list of species, because this is also essential for sequencing all eukaryotic species in Africa. And right now, I think there is no such list. We looked everywhere, so I believe this will be the lateral effect of what we are doing, and naturally by the end there will be a list, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Roxana. And I think there's a follow-up question to that. If collaborating with laboratories outside of the sample provider countries, what is your experience with access and benefit sharing obligations, specifically under the Nagoya Protocol. So I get this is still an evolving thing. Do you have any comment to that?
Yes,
please?
so we have our LC committee working on this. We already know that this is going to be very different for different countries. So this will also be related to the feasibility criterion, which I mentioned before. We, during the pilot, we will not attempt to have organisms from all 55 African countries. We will be happy if we can get organisms from 5 different African regions. I think this will be a great success anyway. But by the end of the project, we hope to get in touch with all of the countries. And I have to say that right now we are just scratching the surface here.
Yeah, thank you, Roxana. So we're kind of very close to the time. So I will just give all the speakers 1 minute each to kind of maybe communicate what they think the listener should take home with, or what they think they should go home with. So maybe I'll begin with you, Roxana, basically. So what do you think based on this, that the listeners basically should be the take-home message for this particularly? Sorry, I think you're on mute.
Yes, could you repeat the last?
Yeah. So what my question is, what should be the take-home message in terms of, one word summarizing all of this in terms of a sentence, basically for the listeners today?
So about pilot project, the message I would like everyone to remember is that you are all welcome, and this is possible. So don't lose your faith. Just contact us. There's a lot of ways you can contribute to this, and you are all welcome.
All right, thank you, Roxana. Dr. Nwala, please, take home message to the African biogenome community.
I said, we need, as a continent, to fully embrace biogenomics and the biotechnology. And for this to happen, we need capacity. And my message to the project or to the partner is to build capacity on the continent. You can't feed your children from the neighbor's kitchen. So we need capacity on the continent, and we support all the initiatives that builds capacity on the continent. Secondly, we need investment. These are public, what I would call public goods. And the public goods needs public investment. There has been, I think, a miscommunication, a fear-mongering about biotechnology or genomics that has restrained some policymakers to provide the necessary financial support. And we think, and this is the message that we want to give to our policymakers, we need to invest on this, because without biotechnology, without embracing genomics, without knowing what we have, we cannot achieve our goals of ending hunger, our goals of reducing significantly poverty on the continent. So this is my message to the participants. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nwala. Professor Hard, do you very briefly?
Very briefly, I just want to say, I think it's a really exciting time for the African Biogenome Project. I'm thrilled, and my message is collaboration and sharing. And this is a new era. We're so lucky to have scientific tools that can be used and deployed for these exciting projects that I heard about. And EMBL is here to help share, collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Hart. So with this, we would like to bring the session to a close. Thank you all for listening. We would take about 5 minutes break and then come back to the next session of the African Biogenome Project. And that will be a plenary session where we'll have fantastic discussions as well. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for your time.